friends, welcome back to my channel, Planty Princess 92. My name's Ashley, and in today's video I'm going to show you how I do a full flush on my semi-hydroponic plants. So I have multiple plants here that I'm going to show you how I completely flush them, and then I'll kind of just tell you what I do in between those flushes. Now I have two previous videos regarding the semi-hydroponics. I have a video where I transplanted all of my Hoyas into semi-hydroponics and briefly explaining kind of, everything that goes along with growing semi-hydroponically. And then I have a second video that discusses the nutrient solution for growing semi-hydroponically. So today I want to show you how I'm going to flush some of these plants, and we'll go from there. So let's just get right into it. So I'm going to be starting with this Magic Marble Syngonium, and this and three others I just got, if you saw, from Green Spaces ID from Indonesia, but I just potted them in here. So because I'm doing all my others, I want to keep them all in the same schedule, so I'm going to give this a full flush as well. So I'll start off by showing you, if I wasn't doing a full flush, what I would do in between is I'd top my water off with clean, fresh water. When I notice the level is below about 1/3, so on the 4-inch pot I'm using, that would be about right here. And I'd also go ahead and, maybe about at the halfway point in between a full flush, I would take it out of the pot, change my nutrient water, and then I just go ahead and run this under just to kind of flush it, or like leach it as if you would do with soil for any buildup. You want to make sure you use lukewarm water, not too cold, not too hot, because that could damage and put the plant into shock. And now I'll show you what I do for a full flush. So I'm going to be changing completely the Leca that I'm using. Now Leca's reusable, but to make it easy, I already have fresh cleaned Leca up here. To make it easy, I already have fresh, clean Leca up here. So I'm going to put the Leca that from each of the pots that I'm going to be flushing, and I just have a regular old pot that I'm going to put all this Leca in. And after I'm done doing all this and cleaning up, I will then go ahead and scrub this old Leca, rinse it off. I'll boil it for a few minutes, and then I will just put it back into my container for the next time I do a full flush. If you don't have as many plants that you're doing a full flush on at once, you could simply just take your plant out, stick it in a glass of water while you're cleaning it, clean your Leca off, and then reuse that same Leca right away into your pot. But again, because I have so many, it would just be easier if I use fresh Leca, clean this, and then this will be ready for the next time I do a full flush. And I'll just continue to switch it out like that. So I'm going to carefully, I just kind of shake the pot to get the roots up. Dump some of the Leca out. And then we have the whole plant out. So what I'm going to do is, and this is really important for plants you just recently potted up from soil or any other medium into Leca, because even though you thoroughly wash the roots, you still always have a little bit of that soil or sphagnum or whatever it is that you used that's still kind of stuck in the crevices of the roots. So if this is especially if this is the first flush you're doing since transplanting, you definitely want to make sure you rinse off all that old soil, and with any plant you always want to make sure you're checking for any decay and remove that right away as well. So I'll turn my water on so it's lukewarm, because I don't want to, again, shock the plant with too hot or too cold of water. And then I'll just go ahead and I'll rinse really, really well. Now this plant, for some reason, on the top of the soil, it was getting not crazy mold, but it was getting on top, did I say soil? On top of the leca. It was getting a little bit of mold, like on some of the balls really close to the base of the plant. And I'm really not sure why, but I want to make sure, actually I think I know why. I'm not sure if this is 100% correct, but this plant, I had it in my grow tent, and some of the outer leaves started like getting really soft and kind of falling off. I think it was too much humidity for this specific plant, and it was making it get mushy. So because of that, I think that is what created the mold to start forming near the base of this plant and on the leca balls. So I'm just going to make sure I thoroughly rinse this, and I'm going to gently, try to get in between all the stems. And I'll just, obviously I removed this out of the grow tent and moved it to a better location, so hopefully that stops happening. Now I also rinse off my leaves anytime I clean my plants or repots, or, in this case full flush, because it helps prevent pests and it helps get rid of pests if there is any on there that you're not aware of at this point. So after I rinse, this is the pot I had it in, so there was nutrient water in it, but I'm going to fill it up with water so I can set the plants in the water while I'm cleaning, getting them all out and ready. So I will do a couple of these at a time, just because it makes it a little easier to do, kind of like, at least for me, in sequence, like take a couple of these out, rinse them off, and then, pot a couple up, and then I'll just go back and forth like that. So now you see on this one, this is one of the ones I also just got from Green Spaces. If I'm not mistaken, I think this Philodendron Hasadum Silver Sword, I think this was the one that had really dry roots that I let sit in water for a little over 24 hours. So as you can see here, some of those roots kind of died off. So I want to make sure I'm gonna just gently rub my fingers, and whatever comes off when I do that, that way I know most of the decay and rotted or dried up roots that are now dead are fully off of the plant. Because aside from continuing to rot and just making a bigger mess, it takes energy away from the plant, because the plant sends that energy into repairing something that it can't physically fix. We get a boo-boo and it heals. That's not the case with plants. If they get a ripped leaf or damaged leaves or damaged roots, they can't repair it. So it's just wasted energy. And now you can see that looks much healthier than it did before. I'll do 3 at a time, so I'll do one more. Now again, this one has a tiny bit of old roots coming off, and that's also normal when you switch to hydroponics. Now, the old roots tend to die off either way and grow new roots, because the roots grow a little differently in water than they do in soil. So basically what's happening is the plant is now growing new roots that are better able to take up the nutrients they need in water and eventually shedding the old roots. So if you see roots coming off, as long as you see new roots starting to grow in, don't panic, that's perfectly normal. But you do want to make sure you get rid of all that old stuff. So I have 3 plants that I'm going to start with: the Monstera Peru, the Philodendron Cristatum, Silver Sword, and the Syngonium Magic Marble. So like I said, I already have my Leca here. These are going in 4-inch pots. So I'm just going to take the pots I already had them in. Oh, my chair's tipping and stuck. And I'm going to thoroughly clean them with a little bit of soap and water. Now on this, I will use warmer water because I feel like it just cleans better. So I'm thoroughly going, and now, you know, like I said, mine don't have too much, well really any buildup at all, because I've only been growing these plants and hydroponics for a couple weeks now, and some of them less. But I'm hoping I can keep up with my flushing, so that way every time I flush there really is not any buildup whatsoever, and if there is, it's very minimal, because that would be best for the plant. But when you do have any buildup, you want to make sure you really scrub that off of the pot, off of the saucer. And if you're using the same Leca, you want to scrub it off of there as well. All right, so now that I have these done, I will grab my Leca, and I'm just going to fill a tiny bit into the bottom. It's about right here, so I can have a little layer so the roots aren't sticking out of the bottom yet, but still have enough room that the roots aren't all jammed up at the top of the pot. And then I'll just hold it in place and top off with the fresh, cleaned Leca. You want to make sure that, you know, the base of your stem and all the roots are in the pot, but you want to make sure that it's not so submerged that any point of it is going to rot or start to decay. And now I'll just finish these 3, and then we'll do the same thing all over again. Now this one's stem is a little longer, so it's actually all the way down at the bottom of the pot because it's long and has roots up until where the leaves start, so it needs that extra support until I put in like a trellis or something for it to grow on. And because these stems are a little thicker and they can handle being in water like that, I know that they won't start to decay and get mushy. Again, you see roots that are starting to shed. With that being said, you can see how healthy the plant is, so I'm not worried that, and there's also no root growth right there. If you can see it, it's not focusing well, but so I'm not worried that, you know, the roots are shedding. Now with Hoyas, at least I've noticed with mine, you want to be a little more careful because, you know, my Hoyas that I recently just transferred, they don't have too much of an extensive root system. They do have enough that they're going to be fine, and obviously they're going to continue to grow. But this happened with me with a couple of my Hoyas. Some of the leaves, the older leaves, when you transfer or like transplant or repot them, while they're trying to acclimate and get used to that new growing environment, their leaves get really weak and sometimes they fall off. So you just want to be extra careful with their leaves anytime you transplant them. So now this Hoya Bella Alba Marginata, it had a peduncle when I first got it, and then I transplanted it into Leca, and the peduncle is gone. It also lost its roots, but it lost its roots maybe like 2 weeks ago, and it's starting to grow new roots, and it's perfectly healthy. So again, I am not worried. Now when you keep them or have them in Leca for a while, they start to attach their roots to the medium. So if that happens, you can either try to gently remove them, or if they won't come off easily, you can see how the root is attached on there. And sometimes that happens, the root came off with it, which is perfectly fine. But obviously if you have a big root ball with a lot of them on there that won't come off, you obviously don't want to tear your whole root ball off. So I would say just leave it while you're rinsing it. If it falls off, it falls off. If not, just make sure there's not any buildup on it and clean it as best you can while it's still attached to the root ball. This is one of my favorite Hoyas. I'm going to do a video on some facts and some care tips about this one. This is the Hoya SPIV from WMZ. And keep an eye out for that video, and I will explain what all those fancy letters mean. But it's a very unique Hoya. I love it. I love the venation, and I love the coloring and how the venation kind of sticks out in like that lime green. It's so amazing. Okay, well I guess I need that on. So I'm gonna just clean these pots again. And then I just rinsed away any of the soap and any of the roots, because while I have my pot sitting in here, I don't want any of that to get on, any of the soap to get on them and then be stuck in the solution for my roots to suck it up. And I don't want any of that old root decay to get stuck either. Again, this is another one that has a pretty long stem, so I can stick it further down so it has more support. Now, as I said, this one, the roots completely came off, and it has a couple, but not really that many. You can propagate in Leca. So obviously, as you saw, I have mine just as if it was just regularly growing hydroponically. But you could propagate this, and you could stick it back in water, propagate in water until the roots come back in. You could stick it in Leca and have the water all the way up to, so the roots are actually submerged in the water and Leca, or you could just stick it in the Leca and, like I said, and how I'm doing it, grow it regularly, semi-hydroponically, and the Leca will wick it up and surround where the roots will come in, and that will be just fine as well. Okay, so I do have a few more to do, but those I will do while I'm off camera because they have, they'll be a little more difficult because they have trellises in them and all that other fun stuff. So for right now, I'm going to finish up with these by rinsing out the pots, the cover pots that I had them in, such as this one here. And then the other ones I just had, and I'll show you right here in a second. And I'll also show you how the water looks, even though they were only in here for, you know, not too long. You can see the buildup that's just floating around in the water. And that's only after like 2 weeks or so. So you want to make sure you really clean this out thoroughly with soap and water, especially now, like I've been saying, mine doesn't have any buildup stuck to anything, but even so, I still want to make sure that I'm thoroughly cleaning it, because if I don't, then the buildup is just going to build up faster, which is what I'm trying to prevent altogether. I want to have as minimal buildup as possible. Now this is just a glass like bakeware sheet, which is nice because it's deep enough that it fills up high enough to where the plants, where it's appropriate for the plants. I like it because I can fit 4 or 5 plants in here at one time. And this is also nice because I have these plants in my grow tent, so it's nice to just have one solid, I guess under tray you could call it, where all the plants have a stable tray to sit in, and it kind of saves a little bit of space because they're not all individually in other pots or saucers. Now, normally, actually, before I put any plants in here, so I'll take that out, I already have my nutrient solution pre-mixed. And if you aren't sure about hydroponic nutrients, check out the video that I made all about hydroponic nutrients to grow semi-hydroponically or even hydroponically. That video will be right here, right now. And now I'll just tell you what I do. So I have 1 teaspoon of Flora Bloom, Flora Grow. I have a teaspoon of Super Thrive, and I have 2 teaspoons for a gallon. All of those are for a full gallon. I have 2 teaspoons of new plant food in here as well. So I just shake it up each time before I use it. I'll fill my reservoir. and I'll test the pH. I'll test the pH before I even stick any plants in it to make sure I don't have to raise it or lower it before I stick any plants in there. Now, if I do need to raise it or lower it, I would do so with general hydroponics, pH up or pH down. Those are also, I also touched on those in my hydroponic basics video. So you rinse it before and after use, stick it in, turn it on, and just kind of swirl it around. My level is 5.29, so that's perfect. I'm going to turn it off, rinse it off. Most plants are comfortable at a pH level between 5.5 and 6.5, and although this is a little under 5.5, I noticed for my plants, after a day or two, the pH level tends to go up a couple points, or I guess you could call them. So I like to have it a little lower, so that way when it goes up, I'm not having to fuss with it and, you know, change it when it's already in here, because that makes it a little difficult. I mean, obviously it can be done, but then I have to take all the plants out, test it, add pH down, swirl it around, test it again until it's at an appropriate level. So we'll add these plants in. And that's it. And then I will go through and do the same steps with all my other plants. Thank you guys again for joining me. I hope this semi-hydroponic video was again helpful and gave you a little more insight on how to grow your plants semi-hydroponically or even hydroponically. Before I started and before you start, I would recommend doing a decent amount of research. You can't just, there's so much out there, you can't just watch one video from one person or one article from one person and think you have it all, because people do things so differently and you never know what could work for you. So I hope I was able to provide some information that will be helpful to you guys, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you're interested in the content I provide. Excuse me. Check out my Instagram at instagram.com/plantyprincess92 for daily plant content. And as always, every plant's a princess. Bye.